I'm a 22-year-old girl. I was looking on Craigslist to buy a couch for my new apartment about a month ago. I found something that I thought seemed like a really good deal. From the pictures, the couch seemed to be in great shape. The seller wanted to be contacted by email, and his email was mexicanpoppy666@hotmail.com. I felt that email was a bit off-putting, but I decided to go ahead and put in my offer anyways. He responded within 5 minutes and accepted my offer and was already asking for my address. I felt a little bit uncomfortable with this asking. I didn't want a stranger coming in my house. I suggested that I just come to his house and pick it up, but he continually insisted that he come to my house. Eventually, I stopped responding, and a day later he emailed me again giving me his address. I didn't know if I should go at that point, but it seemed like a steal, almost too good to be true, and according to his address, he didn't live very far from me. I got in my van and drove over to the seller's house. I immediately noticed that his house was a bit smaller than all the other houses on the block. When I rang the doorbell, a middle-aged man wearing a baseball cap answered the door. He gave me a huge smile and invited me in. I immediately felt uneasy, and he led me to his living room, and I saw the couch. Immediately, I saw scuff marks and small tears in the couch. It looked nothing like it did in the pictures. I commented on this, and he just smiled and offered to lower the price. I told him, I'm not interested. And here's where things started to get even weirder. As I was making my way out of the house, he put his hand on my shoulder and offered to give it to me for free if I was willing to, quote-unquote, give him something in return. I let out a disgusted no and got back into my car. I didn't even look out of the window, and I just drove off as fast as I could. But it doesn't end there. That same night, I was laying in my bed watching TV, and I thought I heard somebody stumping up the steps of my porch. I muted the TV and was able to clearly hear the sound of someone messing with my front doorknob. I jumped out of my bed and tiptoed over to the door. I looked through the keyhole, but whoever it was already gone. Then I thought I could hear the sound of the gate in the backyard open and close. That's when I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Soon, I heard the sound of somebody messing with the back door. I yelled to whoever it was that the police were on their way. And after that, I heard the sound of the gate opening and closing again. They were gone. This was a month ago, and nothing's happened to me since, but I still can't sleep at night. I'm 99% sure it was the man selling the couch. He must have followed me home. There's no way it was just a coincidence. I don't plan on using Craigslist anymore, but I'm still trying to find a new apartment. I was looking for a car to buy my son for his 18th birthday. I was searching all of the car websites, and of course they're all overpriced as expected. I felt like Craigslist would be one of the few places to find an actual deal. And lo and behold, I found a car in good condition, and for only $500 at that. This seemed like a steal, and the seller only lived about 10 miles away, and that's not a bad drive for looking at a new car. I gave him a call to set up a time to come check it out. The man sounded normal on the phone, and he said that there wouldn't be any problems with the car, and he introduced himself as Bob. I pulled up the dirt roads of Bob's property. I was about 15 minutes early. It was a little tiny house with a decent-sized property, only because it was a bit far from the nearest neighbor. The garage was open, so I walked over to see if anybody was inside. But except for an unusual amount of car parts, it was empty. The car was nowhere in sight. The only car in sight was an old pickup truck. I went over to the front door to check the house numbers. Yeah, it was the right address. The doorbell button was missing, so I knocked on the door. I knocked for exactly 5 minutes before deciding to give the man a call. So I dialed his number, and I heard the sound of a phone ringing from inside the house. I was extremely confused at this point. Now I knew I had the right house. I didn't understand why he was home but wasn't answering. I decided to take a peek through one of the windows and see if anybody was inside. Peering through the glass, I couldn't see much because it was pretty dark inside the house. I saw a very old-fashioned dining room set, but across from that, I saw somebody standing at the back door of the house, just staring outside. I figured that must have been Bob. I knocked on the window, but he didn't even make a move. There was no gate or anything to the backyard. It was just a wide open yard. I simply walked around the house to the backyard. I didn't understand how he couldn't hear me. When I got to the back door, I made a shocking realization. The figure standing at the back door was a taxidermied human being. I went straight back the way I came and went back into my car. I looked out my window one last time before driving off. The blinds that I peeked into had been shut, but I could see one of the blinds bent open. Someone was at the window watching me. You could probably guess I had the pedal to the floor the whole way home. The whole situation still makes no sense. All the car parts, the fact that there was no car, the fake plastic human being, the fact that there was no car leads me to believe that whoever that man was wasn't planning on selling me anything. And that also leads to the disturbing thought that I was very close to becoming a lifeless statue staring out of that man's back door. This is a popular story with my family and most of my friends. Amanda is my brother's girlfriend. At the time of this story, she was looking for her first apartment and moving out from her parents' house. Her and my brother didn't want to move in together since they had only dated for a few months. She opted instead to search for a roommate online. Browsing Craigslist, she found an ad titled something like "Roommate Wanted, Females Only." This sort of thing was common since the area she was looking in was mostly young professionals. The listing was for a room in a house for about $225 a month, which was quite a cheap compared to most places listed. The occupant listed herself as a 23-year-old college student that wasn't comfortable with living with any males. The other roommate would have her own room and attached bathroom. So far, Amanda was into the place. However, the listing only had a single photo from outside the property. Amanda sent an email wanting to meet the occupant and tour the house. Within 30 minutes, she receives an email back with all the details and a time to stop by. The girl worked late hours and wanted Amanda to stop by at 8 p.m. When Amanda arrives, there's a handwritten note at the front door saying, "Door broken, use back door." Walking around the house, it looks nice but slightly unkempt. Tall grass, weeds, and dusty windows. Still no alarms for Amanda though. When she knocks on the back door, an older man opens the door. At first, Amanda thinks she has the wrong house, but the man reassures her and says the occupant was out and he was the landlord. The occupant asked him to meet Amanda since she was working late. He seemed pleasant and offered to show her around. Alarms start going off, but aren't at red alert yet. First, the guy was clearly in his 40s, unshaven and looked like he lived in his car. Also, the only kitchen light was on. As they walked around the house, Amanda noticed one huge red flag. No furniture. The landlord was polite about answering questions, but seemed irritable keeping the lights on for too long, rushing her around and only letting her look at rooms for a few moments. There was a single room that the landlord wouldn't open, telling her that it was the occupant's room and he didn't want to invade her privacy. As they walked down the hallway into the living room, she noticed the front door was planked and had nails across it. broken for sure. Amanda's creepometer is starting to ding, so she decides to wrap up the walkthrough and leave, but trying to be polite. As she's giving the guy her thanks for the showing bit, he perks up and says that he forgot to show her the basement. It's recently furnished and would be a great rec room, and she should take a look down there. At the time, Amanda and the landlord are standing in the small hallway between the front living room and the back kitchen. And this little hallway was the basement. When he opens the door, it opens outward to create something of a barrier between Amanda and the back door. The basement is pitch black. He smiles and motions down the stairs and says, "Ladies first." What happens next is nothing more than a stroke of luck. Amanda gets a text just as someone randomly parks in the front of the house. Thinking on her feet, she pretends it's a phone call and answers her phone. "Hey! Yeah, are you here? I'll come out around the back and let you in. It's great, you have to see it." With the motion of confidence, she excuses herself around the landlord and walks out of the back door. She says the guy just looked at her like he was confused. Once outside, she sprinted to her car and sped the hell out of there. When Amanda got home, she told her mother and brother everything. Cops were called, they took her statement, and went to investigate. The Craigslist post had already been removed. They later found out the house had been foreclosed over 6 months earlier and the property had been abandoned. When the police investigated, they found out that the closed room the landlord didn't want her to go into was where the man had been staying. There was a pile of dirty blankets, rotten food, and empty gallon jugs everywhere. More creepy was he had plastered ripped up pages from porno magazines all over the walls in the room. The real scary part was the basement. The man had tied a thin piece of fishing twine at about shin level across the stairs and halfway down. The basement was empty except for another pile of old blankets, a broom handle wrapped in leather belts, and a small box with a few rolls of assorted tape. Amanda ended up not moving in.